Welcome, one and all, again to um, I did say I was tired of covering George Galloway, but turns out Boris had quite a nice surprise lined up for us all. Or shall we say, at least the Met Police had a very, very nice surprise for us lined up indeed. So, as always, welcome, one and all, to our little afternoon soiree. Got to be really careful because I've been watching Bridgerton. I don't know why. I watched one episode and I'm I'm like into season 2, and I'm like, what is this? What has happened? But other than that, yeah, it's quite a nice, interesting. So, if you don't know or have been following, Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, that's important later because we'll get into that, have both received fines with, to what we have heard, more fines on the way. And if you only have to cast your mind back just a couple of months ago to when PartyGate all kicked off, and when I think Boris literally managed to hang on by a finger, literally was hanging on like that. I think there are a lot of MPs who are now thinking that might have been our chance to get rid of him, and we might have very well blown it. But anyway, before we do jump into not only some of the events that interestingly have happened of today, we will also get into what happened on talk radio, because it was a very interesting interview, and it's not very often on talk radio that the hosts get really mad and angry at their conservative guests, shall we say. And the conservative guest in this case just happened to be Jacob Rees-Mogg. So we're going to definitely be checking that out later, because very, very, very interesting indeed. So, as always, let's welcome who we've got in chat this evening. So, Colin Thompson, good evening to you from New York. Cathal OG, evening to you. Pretty Bird, morning from the US West Coast, as they always say, West Coast, best coast. oh no, yeah, left coast, best coast, I think it is. It might even be referring to the wrong coast entirely. Ignore my terrible use of geography there. Simon Carr, good afternoon from Brighton. Good evening to you. PE, good evening to you. Pretty Bird, Bridgerton, it's a fun romp. Or as I like to call it, Bonkerton. That's certainly what it does seem like. So yeah, I'd say a quick recap is in order, but I think you're all caught up really on how we got here. But for those of you who might not be in the know, here's a quick 101 just to catch you all up. Essentially, during the pandemic, the government released guidelines of, well, not just guidelines, but rules, shall we say, that it wanted people to follow so we could at least slow down the spread of the pandemic, to at least allow vaccines to roll out and at least slow down the spread of the virus, make sure that hospitals didn't become overcrowded, etc., etc. Except just a few months ago now, revealed, of course, by none other than Dominic Cummings, revealed that, actually, Boris and co. had been having parties. And not only that, there was photographic evidence of these parties taking place, which started a massive brouhaha to see whether or not this had actually taken place. And of course, the Prime Minister said on, more than one occasion that, he hadn't attended such a party and that no rules had indeed been broken. And he said that quite a few times in Parliament, where, remember, lying to Parliament is a resigning offence. Unfortunately, there's no automatic resignation. It's more up to the ministerial code, which is essentially an unwritten set of rules that ministers, well, keep themselves to. And if obviously you break one of those rules, you are expected to resign. Or basically the leader of your party says, hop it. Now, of course, in this case, Boris Johnson is the leader of the Conservative Party. And the only way to get rid of him is through a vote of no confidence. And after all these allegations came out, after all the evidence came out, after the emails came out of these parties being planned, Boris was in some hot water. And I know people don't like me calling him Boris, but who cares? He was really, really in some hot water. And he almost, from what we know, the rumor is we were 2 letters off. That's how close it came. That's how close it was. Just 2 letters, and we would have had a vote of no confidence. Now, as I said at the time, it's not just the fact that a vote of no confidence happens, it's the fact that afterwards there is a vote, and it's a secret ballot vote, so you don't know who's voting which way. And the people who wanted to get rid of Boris, most definitely the very much the centrist MPs, most definitely the Cameroons or the Cameronites, whatever you want to call them, definitely wanted to get rid of Boris because they always said he's dragging down the image of the party. You know, Cameron did such a good job in trying to quote unquote reform the image of the Tory party from the 90s into a more modern centrist right-leaning party, and Boris is now, well, ruining it all. But it's not just them, and we'll get into obviously those guys later down the line. But we were close. We were very, very close. And of course, all the MPs afterwards said, you know what? We're going to let Boris off this time. But if he gets a fine, he's out. Now, of course, Boris has received a fine. So the big question is now, will these MPs follow through on that threat? Because it will require those letters from the 1922 committee to start that vote of no confidence. And of course, just as last time, it will then become a secret ballot to, well, can we get Boris out? Can we actually vote him out? And the answer is the arithmetic was just completely unsure. And I think today, still, even though Boris now has been fined, the arithmetic is still unknown. Could they get the votes? And one of the reasons I think they are so hesitant to actually kickstart this vote is that Boris is so gaffe prone. He's such a magnet for scandals and doing stuff wrong and making the wrong calls that they are terrified that if they put this vote of no confidence into play and that vote happens, he's then safe for a year. And they say a week's a long time in politics. A year is, well, a year is almost a century in politics. I mean, look where we were this time last year. Just in the political landscape, it's completely and utterly changed from where we originally were. So we've got no idea. And I think that's their fear. They've got such a fear that between then and now, who knows the kind of scandals that Jonson could drag up or get involved with. And then they've got no way to get rid of him. And remember, Jonson is gaffe prone, completely scandal absorbent. There is ultimately one coming down the line. There always is with good old Boris. It's bound to turn up sooner or later. And I think it is being played out. The arithmetic for those Conservative MPs is being played out. Because it's not just, of course, MPs that are very, very worried about this. You've got the local council elections coming up in May. And make no mistake that anger over this, public anger over the PartyGate scandal is at an all-time high still. And the Conservatives are just hand-waving it, saying, oh, Partygate's over. It doesn't matter. You saw Jacob Rees-Mogg just a few weeks ago on LBC desperately trying to hand-wave all this stuff away, saying that this is a non-issue. And yet you had all these voters telling him, oh no, Partygate is an issue. It's a massive issue. So we've also had, I think it was Guildford, I believe it was. I want to say Guildford had 7 local council elections up for grabs just this last week. Yeah. But he's a war prime minister. Guildford had 7 council up for grabs, from what I remember. Labour held all theirs, but 3 Conservative and 1 Independent all lost their seats to the Lib Dems. I think the May local council elections are gonna be absolutely brutal for the Conservatives. And remember, a lot of the low-level people in the Conservative Party are gunning for those local council seats. And they are not going to be happy one bit if they get sacrificed so that Jonson can stay in power. They are not going to be very happy bunnies one bit. But of course, it's not just those people at the local council elections. It's also the northern MPs, those red wall seats that are, shall we say, those red wall Conservatives not sitting pretty in their seats at the moment. Because obviously, just next door in Wakefield, well, a local Conservative got up to no good and, well, got into a spot of trouble, to say the least. And of course, there is now a by-election going to happen there. And already, we can see from the numbers, Labour is 7 points ahead in Wakefield. And that is upsetting a lot of northern MPs, a lot of those northern Tory MPs. Let's make that very clear. Because, as I've always said, whenever we've covered these northern Tory red wall MPs, they are desperate in any way, shape, or form to distance themselves completely, as far as they possibly can, from the rest of their more true blue, shall we say, Tory brethren. You know, we are Tories, but we're not like the rest of the Tory party. We're Northerners, just like you. That's been their sales pitch. And they are not happy that they have been tarred with the same feather brush. And we've been on a bit of a we've been on a we've been on a bit of a roll recently. But if there's one thing the left should be doing, especially in any area that, well, has a Tory MP, they need to be organising a letter writing campaign. Write to your local Tory MP and say, hey, why on earth are you keeping Boris? Look up their comments about the last, shall we say, or should we call it PartyGate Part 1, and remind them that if they said that if Boris gets a fine and they said he has to go, well, guess he has to go. So overall, there is really going to be an awful big pushback from these Red Wall MPs, an awful big pushback, because they are not happy. Because the last thing they want to get tarred with is that same brush of the rest of the Tory party, because, as we said earlier, they are desperate not to be tarred with that same brush. But of course, I want to go back to Colin Thompson, you said here, but he's a war prime minister. Now, this is interesting because we've replaced prime ministers during war before. It's not a big issue. In fact, I think it was Churchill, and I think, it was Churchill. How long did it take him to get in position? 3 days, I think it was. These things can happen pretty quick. Make no mistake, Jonson is making us out that a leadership election is going to take months. It's going to take at least 6 months to do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think from Theresa May stepping down and Jonson getting elected, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was like a month, 2 months at the most. It really wasn't that long. And it just goes to show you, if they want to, they can get this done pretty quick. Oh, this is good. Phyllis, yeah, Nigel Mills is my MP. He's told him to go, and we are not at war. Very true. Very true. And that's the point. We are at war. But of course, Boris's, shall we say, walkabout in Kiev, he's desperate to try and prove otherwise. A bit at least, just try and save his skin, at least. But who is Jonson really at war with? Jonson is really at war with Rishi Sunak. I have said this now, that I thought Dominic Cummings might be the prime suspect. However, the more I think about it, the more Boris becomes the prime suspect. He's become the new number one suspect. Who benefits? Who benefits the most if Sunak goes? Ultimately, it's Jonson, because he did not like Sunak's massive rise to stardom. And remember, as we've said before, multiple times, the top two contenders, or at least the top former, shall we say, top contenders, were Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. Both gone. Sunak especially gone. So make no mistake, Jonson is at war, or there is a war going on in Downing Street, but it's not against Russia, and it's not looking at the war in Ukraine saying we can't replace Jonson now. The war is going on between number 10 and number 11. And of course, for those of you who don't know, number 11 is where the Chancellor lives, right next door. So ultimately, that's the real war we've got to look at. And if by some miracle, hang on, let's turn the light on. Too light. There we go. And if by some miracle Jonson manages to get ousted, like the letters go to the 1922 committee, he loses, of course, the vote of no confidence. I fully expect Rishi Sunak to still throw his hat in the ring. He's not going to do it. He obviously is. Like I say, there's enough. He's built up, like Liz Truss has, he's been building up support to do this. And it's one of the things that Jonson hasn't liked. So it makes perfect sense for all those revelations for Sunak to come out after a very, very bad press week for him. And then Jonson can get rid of him. And of course, remember, the last time PartyGate rolled around, Sunak was saying that Jonson should go if he got fined. I wonder if he'll be making supportive comments about Jonson in the not too distant future, or maybe encouraging Jonson to go. I highly suspect he might, to be honest. And of course, you're all right, Captain Torlek. Yep, Party of Law and Order now being run by a criminal. And that is what's really annoying a lot of the Tories, because they've branded themselves quite nicely with almost a branding iron. We are the party of law and order. Now, I've said this before. You're a party about law and order. Your leader broke the rules and is now being confirmed and fined by the police. Should he not be punished? After all, that's their calling card. We are the party of law and order. Criminals should be punished. Well, the ultimate punishment for Jonson should be to lose his job. He lied to Parliament. He broke his own lockdown rules. The police have investigators. They found him guilty, and he's got a fine. And from what we've heard, there's more fines on the way. So we could be in a situation, possibly this time next week, where Jonson has had multiple fines against him. How long will those MPs go, we have to get rid of him? Like, what is the political calculus in their heads? They have to get rid of him. I don't think they can hold on to him for much longer, or try and support him. He is an absolute danger to the party. He's a danger to the whole Tory party brand. How can you be a party of law and order when you've got someone who's been fined by the police for breaking the law? As we said earlier, public anger is at an all-time high for this. And like I say, as I've said, if you've got a Conservative MP right now in the UK, you should be writing a letter to them saying, why are you keeping this guy? Remind them that they are the party of law and order, that you are not holding Boris Johnson to account. And especially to put the sting in the tail, even if you didn't vote for them, just say, I won't be voting for you at the next general election. Just to just to put the little, signature on it there, because that will really get their attention then. Because you may remember during the GCSE crisis, what caused the outcry, what caused the U-turn to happen so fast? It was angry Tory parents sending letters to their MP. How dare you do this to my child? Writing letters works, and writing mass letters with the same message of, hey, you should get rid of Jonson because it's damaging the party and we're not going to vote for you next time, works. So again, if you are someone in the UK and you are outraged by this, you can very, very easily find your MP's address quite easily. You can send them an email as well if you don't want to put pen to paper. If you want to do that quickly, like say, by all means, go for it. Don't bother with Twitter because largely they'll just ignore you because they don't know if you're a constituent or not. Like I say, a letter and an email works far, far more better, especially a letter, because when they go back to their constituent's office, probably tomorrow, the last thing they want is a mound of letters saying you should get rid of Boris over PartyGate. True. Writing, guess I'll be voting Lib Dem would even be more harsh. Very true. Very, very true. So anyway, let's check out what's been happening today, because we have had, I think it was just an hour ago, we've had a resignation. I don't think it was a major resignation, but it's I think it's a justice minister that's resigned. But that's 2 justice ministers now that have resigned under Boris Jonson. Once again, the party of law and order, when you've had 2 justice ministers resign, doesn't send a very good message that you are the party of, well, law and order. Oh yeah, depends where you are. I must point out, depends where you are. If you're in a Tory blue seat or a safe seat, absolutely tell them that you're going to vote Lib Dem. Anywhere else, if you're in the north, tell them you're going to vote Labour. Because again, that puts the fear of God into the Tory party. So let's take a look at what's been happening. Don't know how quickly it's been updated. Oh, we've had an update about 9 minutes ago. Let's see what we've got. So let's go key events. So this is one of the things here straight away. Police have a huge amount of PartyGate evidence yet to be reviewed. So as I said earlier, there's even more stuff coming about this. There's even more stuff coming about PartyGate, which will mean more fines. If Boris Jonson ends up being fined multiple times, the worse his position becomes. He's already been fined once, and we know he's attended other parties in Downing Street. How many more fines is he going to have by all this? How many, when he's, one's already too many, to be honest. If this was a Labour government, and this was Keir Starmer doing this, I'd be saying Starmer would have to go. If this was, a Corbyn government, I'd even be saying, look, Corbyn, you broke the rules. I'm sorry, you have to go. Your position's untenable here. Let's be fair here. So he's going to get fined multiple times, I think. And just how many before the Tory MPs actually react to this in a serious way? And And I'm talking, they send letters to the 1922 committee. Yeah. Jake Link, yeah, he's Teflon Jonson. True. Like I say, I always say this whenever we talk about Boris Johnson in this type of scenario. Jonson has every chance of possibly surviving this. As shocking as that is, he has every chance of surviving this. He could always survive it. He is Teflon Jonson, the man who has survived so many other situations. And you are right, Tarek. Yeah, we've been here before. We were here before last couple of months ago with PartyGate round part 1. Oh. Yeah. Rumors, again, I've heard rumors that some of the parties at number 10, drugs were used as the Speaker of the House ordered police sniffer dogs were called in. Yeah, we have actually seen that recently. I don't know if it's number 10, but they've certainly found evidence of drug use in Westminster. So, but then again, I suspect Nadine Dorries because some of the stuff she comes out with, you've got to really ask that question: is she high? Is she high? Or is that just how she normally is? So the fact that there is this mountain of evidence, Johnson's going to get fined more. I think the real question is or maybe we could have like a bet, like a fantasy football league. How many times do you think Jonson is going to get? Is how many times is Jonson going to get fined? We should have set this up for all the cabinet ministers. We should have had all the names and the boards on the list with like fines, and just every time one gets fined, what Patel's been fined, put it on the board. Jonson's been fined again, put it on the board, and just see where we end up in all this. I really think Jonson is going to end up finding 3 times over this. He might get fined more than that. Cathal OG is going for 6. I think 3. Who's making all these odds? I don't know who's making the odds, but you can make up your own odds yourself. But yeah, I think 3. We've already got Cathal OG on 6. So any more advances on what you think fines are going to be, like I say, put them in the chat. Let me know. By the way, please do hit that like and share button while you're here as well. Like I say, let's get more people in. Let's get more people in on the board. Let's get more people in this, fantasy PartyGate league? I don't know. I think that's what you'd call it. A fantasy PartyGate league. Sounds about right to me. But yeah, so apparently there's a mountain of former evidence, and the senior Met official has said, yes, that is my understanding as well. There's a huge amount of material that the team still has to sift through and collate and then submit to the lawyers to be absolutely certain that they have a cast iron case and are able to prosecute if needs be. So there is more fine coming. More fines coming. Loki's children, we've got 5. Ben, 11. 12 more times. I wonder if any of them could end up in court. Possibly. We never know. But yeah, I'm thinking 3. I'm absolutely thinking 3. That's my number. I think he's going to get 3 fines sent to him. Patel's going to be fined too. Potentially, yes. Ruth Davidson campaigns alongside Douglas Ross as they disagree about whether the MP should resign or not. Ruth Davidson, the former Scottish Tory leader, has renewed her calls for Boris Johnson to quit over the Partygate scandal, as she has accused him of traducing the traducing the office of Prime Minister. I have no idea if that's a Scottish word or not, but I've never seen it before. She's now obviously a Tory peer. She said that the Prime Minister has made a mockery of the British public's sacrifices during the pandemic, opening a split with Douglas Ross, her closest ally and successor, the Conservative leader. Ross was the first Tory MP to publicly urge Johnson to quit in January, but has since withdrawn his no confidence letter to the 1922 committee, arguing it would boost Vladimir Putin if the British Prime Minister was forced out of office during the war in Ukraine. Again, it's a completely ridiculous argument. Just get rid of him. Just get rid of him. Of course, here they talk about the polls. Of course, downplaying the polls, Ross said that if Johnson resigned, that would create a void and create instability. And allies around the world would know that he's about to leave. The most important person in all this, Vladimir Putin, would know he's about to leave, and that instability would undermine everything the West is trying to do to help President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine. I really don't think it would. I really, really do not think this would undermine anything that's going on in Ukraine at the moment. Because at the moment, as far as we know, obviously we're sending weapons to Ukraine. Again, fully in support of that, fully behind, we're behind our NATO and European allies. Don't really think that's too much of a beyond that point. Catho G, good night to you. Off to go do the shopping. Good night to you. Have fun shopping. So yeah, again, this whole war excuse they're putting forward doesn't pass muster. Doesn't pass muster at all. Like I've said, and people have said in the chat, we've changed prime ministers during the First and Second World War. Oh, pardon me. We've changed prime ministers during the First and Second World War. So I think we can do it again and this not be a problem. Oh, yes, of course. This is the Matt Hancock leak. You may remember a couple of, almost last year now at this point. Matt Hancock, obviously, his shall we say, his moment behind the door. According to this, there is too little evidence against the two suspects, and it's too weak to actually be taken to court. Interesting. Very interesting. Oh yes, this is it. Nigel Mills. So, future Partygate revelations may be even worse for the PM, says the Tory MP, now backing calls for his resignation. So that says a lot. That this Partygate, we may not even heard the worst yet. That there are still more Partygate revelations to come. That is shocking that we have further revelations to come over this. And we might not have heard the worst yet. It just goes to show you just how really bad this scandal is. And I just still can't understand why they are so hesitant to get rid of Boris. And I suspect why. Because obviously, if Boris goes, this is going to open up a rift in the Tory party. And as we've said before, Boris is but the wallpaper over the cracks of civil war that have split the Tory party ideologically and in their beliefs about what they want and the direction that they want the party to go in. And currently, Boris is holding that coalition together somewhat. But if he goes, it's open season. And as I've said before, the top two contenders that I always said, the top two ones to put your money on were Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. But now, with how bad and the stuff that's happened to them, especially Sunak, field's open. As far as I'm concerned, it's a complete open field. Who knows? Who knows who's going to end up throwing their hat in the ring? Who knows who's going to win at this point? In a straight up leadership race, who knows? I generally can't tell you anymore now, because the top two favorites, they're out of it. Because, yeah, Captain Torlek just brought it up again. It's not just a case of Rishi or anyone else, or who else gets a fine goes. It's if you're running to be the next, leader of the Conservative Party and effectively the next Prime Minister, you really can't run for this race if you've just been fined. So if you think about it from that, Rishi Sunak can't even run this time if that becomes such a big issue. So, Mickey D, BM, why have you removed the comments about the disgraceful Tory sex offences on minors? I'm just being careful. I know, and obviously it's happened, but I'm just being careful because YouTube is weird. Yeah, obviously it happened. It's bad that it happened, but I'm just being careful because YouTube is weird about that type of stuff. So I'm just being especially careful, to say the least. So anyway, back to here. So yeah, this is what's interesting. So these comments from Nigel Mill were this. So my fear for him, actually, is that the remaining parties that are being investigated actually do sound to be a lot worse. The transgression of the law that one has just been fined for, it does not strike me that this is the end of the situation. If he's been fined for this, then then you've got to think that some more are going to come. Mills also said that he would very shortly be writing to the chairman of the Conservative Backbench 1922 committee to request a vote of no confidence in Jonson. This is how many other Conservative MPs are going to write a letter. That's the number ticking arithmetic game we need to game out. Because last time this happened in January, from what we've heard, we were 2 letters short. Just 2. That was very, very close. And once you trigger a vote of no confidence, you then have to have that secret vote. And you do not know who's going to vote which way. You've got to play the arithmetic that Jonson gets out. Because if not, Jonson's then safe from another one of these votes for a year. And what could happen between now and then? If you get rid of him now, or should we say fail to get rid of him now, and Jonson gets, 2, 3 more fines, or who knows how many he's going to receive. Can't get rid of him now. You've had your no confidence vote. That is the danger. That is the very difficult situation some of these Conservative MPs are now put in, because they are so scared that they will lose that vote of no confidence. If they lose that, they can't get rid of Jonson for over a year. And who knows what else could happen in the next year, that scandals that he could get caught up in. Who knows? Anyway, he wanted to say this. I've not been campaigning against the Prime Minister. I'm a supporter of the Prime Minister. I think he's gone and done great things, and I really regret that it's come to this. Interesting. He also said, I just can't get myself past the idea that a Prime Minister in office can be fined and stay there. I just think it's not a possible position to sustain. And he also said that Rishi Sunak should resign as well, because Rishi Sunak also got fined as well. I think that people have every right to expect, when laws are being put in place for various serious reasons, that the people at the top have to follow them. I'm not saying that the Chancellor should be barred from high office for life, but I think there is in line that we just can't cross. So interesting this, because now that Sunak's had that fine as well, there's even more pressure on Sunak than there was just this weekend. So how long can he survive this? I really don't think he can. I don't think he can keep this up. But then again, it's Boris Johnson. You know, Teflon Johnson, the man who has had so many scandals in his life that would have annihilated and ended any other, member of parliament's career if they had had a similar scandal. So we just don't know what's going to happen, possibly in the next, couple of days. But of course, Johnson certainly managed to get over it this week, because obviously Parliament's in recess for the Easter break. So he certainly managed to avoid PMQs, this, that would normally happen today. If not, he would have absolutely received a pasting. I think everyone would have been calling on him to resign. And again, it would have been interesting to see the Conservative members who would have risen up to at least try and defend him in some bizarre way. And don't worry, we're going to be getting to Jacob Rees-Mogg in a bit and his interesting performance on talk radio. But however, one person I was not expecting was Frosty, Lord Frosty, our good old former Brexit negotiator, has stood up as well, because he's had this to say. So I think it's not possible just to say that was that. This is now. Let's move on. The world is different, as the government is trying to do this morning. We don't yet know what other penalties may be issued and to who. I think, as a source suggested this morning, if there's some thought about bringing forward the Sue Gray report, I think that would be a good idea. I think it's important to bring transparency, to be clear what's happened for the Prime Minister, and to make this case and people to judge him. I don't think it'd be enough just to say nothing. So you've got Frosty here saying that the Sue Gray report needs to be brought forward and released early. That is the last thing I think they want to release, because if Johnson's been fined and we now know that there has been wrongdoing in number 10, I don't think the Sue Gray report's going to be nicer or somehow clear Johnson's good name. Not one bit. It's just going to be an absolute. I think that would make things even worse for him. I think if he decided to release the Sue Gray report early, I really think it would. But of course, now we're on to. Oh, hang on. There we go. Share audio. There we go. Share. So I don't know how many of you saw this afternoon. Julia Hart-Brewer, very much a side of the Conservatives, but I'll tell you this now. The only paper, I think, to come out in favour of Jonson was the Daily Mail, but bear in mind, they did this last time. They came out in favour, and then they quite savvily read the room, and then quickly turned it around to say, oh, we never said we supported Jonson. We really disagree with what he's done with all this PartyGate stuff. So keep an eye out on the front pages of the Daily Mail to see if they start changing their tune over PartyGate. But anyway, we're just going to have a quick break because I just want to recharge my glass because I'm already thirsty. So have a quick break, recharge your glasses. We'll be back momentarily, and then we'll get into this interview because this one is a real doozy for Jacob Rees-Mogg. There we go. Right then, let's get back to this then, shall we? There we go. Right, plugged in. Right. So before we do this, please do remember to hit that like and share button. If you are new to the channel as well, do hit that subscribe button. And if also down below you'd like to help support the channel, there are links down below to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. So let's get into this, because I tell you this now, if you haven't heard this yet, you're in for a treat. Talk radio, if you don't know what talk radio is, it's a radio station here in the UK that is, people always say it's like the left version of LBC. And I'm like, do you actually listen to who they've got presenting on LBC? I mean, Nick Ferrari, who leads the breakfast show, its flagship breakfast show, isn't exactly a lefty. But talk radio, though, is firmly, very firmly, fully conservative, very right wing. All its hosts are very, very firmly on the right wing of things, shall we say? Oh, hello, David. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us. So let's get into this then and have a wee listen to how Julia Hart-Brewer is going to, in a moment, tear into Jacob Rees-Mogg over this PartyGate stuff.
Right now, to what the Prime Minister has...
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk radio. Right now, to what the Prime Minister
had to say yesterday after it emerged that he, his wife, and the Chancellor Rishi Sunak had been given a fixed penalty notice fines for attending a lockdown party, specifically his own 56th birthday party, gathering, meeting, whatever you want to call it, back on the 19th of June 2020. Here is what the Prime Minister had to say yesterday.
I understand the anger that many will feel that I myself fell short when it came to observing the very rules which the government I lead had introduced to protect the public. And I accept in all sincerity that people had the right to expect better. And now I feel an even greater sense of obligation to deliver on the priorities of the British people.
So
that's it. That was absolutely, if you managed to see the full apology from Boris Johnson, it's pathetic. It really, really is. And it builds into the whole thing of, I was the Prime Minister, I was really busy that day, I was working hard, and then all of a sudden there was a birthday. I had no idea what was going on. I thought this was a work event. He leans fully into that mode. Fully into that mode.
The Prime Minister saying sorry, but, let's move on. He's talked about dealing with inflation, cost of living crisis.
Yes, please let us move on. Let's no longer talk about this because it's really uncomfortable for us to talk about. So let's please move on. As I've said, the anger in the UK about this is palpable. I think the Tories are in for an absolute drubbing in May at the local elections. And I think mainly it's going to be over PartyGate. And that is it's going to set the cat amongst the pigeons. I can tell you that now. But the reaction from Tory HQ, it ain't going to be good. It ain't going to be good at all. Yeah. Feet crew. Yeah. I promise not to screw up and do even better next time. Yeah. Sorry, not sorry type of apology. Exactly, Pretty Bird. So anyway, let's continue.
And Ukraine. But does what he said yesterday tally with what he had to say to Parliament on the 8th of December last year?
Mr. Speaker, may I begin by saying that I understand and share the anger up and down the country at seeing Number 10 staff seeming to make light of lockdown measures.
And of course, that was, you remember the bit of the, before really PartyGate was in its infancy, before PartyGate even had its name, PartyGate, this was the bit of footage that had been released of the then press secretary, a position that is only been occupied by that one person since hasn't been fulfilled. Basically saying, what about these parties? And trying to come up with answers about this, joking about this very thing. Boris had a very different reaction to that then.
And I can understand how infuriating it must be to think that the people who have been setting the rules have not been following the rules, Mr. Speaker, because I was also furious to see that clip. And Mr. Speaker, I apologize unreservedly for the offence that it has caused up and down the country, and I apologize for the impression that it gives. But I repeat, Mr. Speaker, that I have been repeatedly assured since these allegations emerged that there was no party and that no COVID rules were broken, and that is what I have been repeatedly assured. But I've asked the Cabinet Secretary to establish all the facts and to report back as soon as possible. And Mr. Speaker, it goes without saying that if those rules were broken, then there will be disciplinary action for all those involved.
Well,
So, and that's not, and that's not even just one of them. Since then, he has said on multiple occasions that there were no parties in Downing Street, and well, and then it became, well, if there were parties in Downing Street, we certainly followed the rules. Again, it's a typical Tory script: deny until you are found out, and then beg for an apology and hope that the public moves on. Bear in mind, as we've been saying just earlier, a few moments ago, this is the party of law and order. Or at least they like to call themselves the party of law and order. Never ever looks good when you've got this going on, you know, from your leader of the Conservative Party. So, but we haven't reached the best part yet, because Jacob Rees-Mogg is about to come on and about to try and defend Boris Johnson. How can you even defend this? If I was a Conservative MP, I'd be absolutely fuming at this. Bear in mind, Boris is meant to have had a meeting of the 1922 committee with a lot of Conservative MPs in attendance, where he assured them this is all fine, this is all going to blow over, nothing's going to be bad. But here we are, and it's still rolling on.
that was what the Prime Minister was saying on the December. Yeah, it's actually reference to a different party. That's a Bring Your Own Booze party. But does it all tally? Well, let's talk to Minister for Brexit Opportunities in the Cabinet, Jacob Rees-Mogg, who joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
The Prime Minister has apologised. He said he's sorry, he understands the anger and frustration, but he's basically told us to move on. Can we move on with the Prime Minister, who's the first Prime Minister in British history to be given a fixed penalty notice to accept that he has committed a criminal offence while in office?
No, absolutely not. He should go. He really should. But of course, obviously, it's Boris Johnson. He's not going to go. As far as he's concerned, he gets away with it. He's got nothing to do with this. Now, the public will forget. We'll walk on. We've got other issues to do. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on the cost of living crisis. Oh, right. We're not actually doing anything about the cost of living crisis. Oh, what about the energy crisis? Oh, we're not actually doing anything about the energy crisis either. Oh, there's a war in Ukraine. Can't change me now because there's a war on. Again, First World War, Second World War, we change prime ministers. And a leadership contest can happen pretty quickly if the Conservatives want it to.
Well, hold on about fixed penalty notices. They've only existed since the 1980s. So
that's okay then.
Walpole could not have been given a fixed penalty notice, nor could Gladstone, nor could Disraeli. So I think this.
What response is that? Oh, Gladstone and Disraeli couldn't have received a fixed penalty notice. Oh yeah, they've only existed since the 1980s, but you know, all those Victorian prime ministers, they couldn't have received a fixed penalty notice. What response is that? What in God's name is response to that question?
Suggestion about fixed penalty notices ignores the fact that they are relatively modern invention, and they are not an indication of a criminal offence.
Yes, they are. No, that's simply not true. Adam Wagner has been very, very clear. He's an expert on COVID lockdown rules, and he's very, very clear that the acceptance of paying the fine when you're issued with a fixed penalty notice for breaching lockdown rules is an admission of a criminal offence.
It's not a criminal offence. It isn't a criminal record.
Yes. It's not a criminal offence. We want to make sure it's not a criminal offence. We are the party of law and order. We do not have our being led by a criminal. What insinuation is this? Jacob Rees-Mogg is the guy the Conservatives love to roll out to defend the indefensible, and even he cannot defend this. Even he cannot defend this.
Court, it hasn't gone through the magistrates' court. And this is important because you have to bear in mind that with fixed penalty notices, and this applies to other fixed penalty notices, you haven't been proved to be guilty as you would be in front of a court.
Then why has he paid the fine?
Oh, I mean, he's right to pay the fine.
So he's paid the fine even though he's not guilty?
No, what I'm saying is that you are putting it...
You can even see this logically makes no sense. That would be like saying, you know, I was caught speeding by the police. I was fined by the police. But I am not a criminal because I paid the fine. None of this makes sense. None of this makes any sense. I don't know why he's trying to defend it on these lines. Go figure on this. Really go figure. You just literally cannot defend this. I don't understand how Mogg thinks he can defend this. And trust me, we haven't got to the car crash yet. We haven't got to the car crash yet.
At a higher level than it factually is, and this reference to previous prime ministers who couldn't have got fixed penalty notices because they didn't exist.
Are you saying this is completely irrelevant? Are you saying that this is akin to getting 3 points on your licence?
I'm not making comparisons.
What is it comparable with?
I'm pointing out what a fixed penalty notice is. And
yeah, what is it comparable with? Very good question. But again, they are desperate. Everyone who is desperately trying to defend this is taking this line that a fixed penalty notice isn't a criminal offence. And yeah, as Joff points out here, I don't like Julia here. Like I say, she's very much a conservative, does spew some nonsense to say the least. But I'll give her this. She's giving Jacob what for and seriously holding his feet to the fire. And that's understandable because most of the conservative media in the UK at the moment has recognized the fact that there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of public anger over this. And now the fact that Jonson's been fined, it's just going to skyrocket. It is just going to absolutely skyrocket.
Why it couldn't have been given to dozens of previous prime ministers because they didn't exist within the British.
Okay, I think we're going down a blind alley on that front. How serious is this? Because I'm old-fashioned and probably bizarrely more old-fashioned than you on this issue, Jacob Rees-Mogg.
More old-fashioned. I've always thought of you as the epitome of fashion.
But I'm old-fashioned apparently in this country for thinking that a prime minister who brings in laws where he basically locks people in their homes, takes away all of our fundamental civil liberties because we're told it's because of COVID and a virus that could kill us. If he then breaks those rules, and who knows how many more fines he will face, this was just the first fine he may be facing for breaking those rules.
Yeah, and that's it. This could just be the first. We have no idea how many fines Jonson could very well receive. We really don't know. But there were lots of parties in number 10 Downing Street. Who knows how many fines he's going to receive eventually? But I think one is too many. They should already be trying to get rid of him. I think he's probably going to end up with 3. But even at that point, if he's a prime minister and he's been fined 3 times, he cannot stand at the next general election. He is going to get absolutely thrashed. He's going to get absolutely thrashed.
And if he then lies about having broken those rules to Parliament, that he is unfit for public office. Why do you think he is still fit to serve as our Prime Minister?
Well, I think the Prime Minister has shown since 2019 that he is an extremely effective leader who gets the big decisions consistently right. And I think...
No, he doesn't. That's, again, a complete lie. He has, quote unquote, got things consistently right. No, especially over COVID. Jonson delayed, dithered about making those big decisions, which cost people their lives. Ironically, the only thing Jonson has got right is supporting Ukraine. You know, he's backing Ukraine. He's said, you know, Russia, what are you doing? This is bad. Like, that is literally the only thing. If you were to be like absolutely be fair, I don't care if you're like the hardest of hardest Boris haters. The only thing Jonson has got right is his stance on Ukraine and supporting them by giving them weapons that we have done. That is the only thing Jonson's got right. And of course, his stance on Ukrainian refugees was incredibly wrong. And, you know, but giving Ukraine weapons, only thing he's got right. That is literally the only good thing Jonson has actually done in support Ukraine that way. His stance on refugees, well, did we think it was going to be any better than those trying to cross the channel? Of course not. You know, but at least he did give weapons to Ukraine. So, you know, as loathed as you know, a lot of people are to praise Jonson, myself, and, you know, I am fighting back, you know, the sick in my mouth to say this, but yes, Jonson got it right in supporting Ukraine and giving their weapons on that right. That was a right call. But as I said a couple of days ago, to someone saying that that proves that Jonson is a fantastic prime minister. A broken clock can be right twice a day, but that's still not going to stop me throwing it in the bin. So, Gadget, evening to you. Evening to you. Oh, Daily Blaz, hello to you.
You need a country that is led by somebody who is capable of doing this. I think he got all the big decisions right in relation to Brexit, in ensuring Brexit was delivered. He got the big decisions right during the pandemic, and
he absolutely got none of the big decisions right about Brexit. We are still dealing with Brexit issues. And by the way, Jacob is meant to be the one clearing up his mess, because Jonson doesn't want to deal with Brexit anymore. So he really, really hasn't about this. So yeah, this is just completely wrong from start to finish. And like I said, at the next general election, if the Conservatives really do stand Boris Johnson at the next election, you know, the Tory nightmare is going to happen. Labour's going to reclaim all the red wall seats. The Lib Dems are going to take a lot of their southern seats, including, apparently, again, if we look at the numbers, including possibly Jacob Rees-Mogg's seat, which would be a massive cause for celebration. I'll tell you that now. But we'll see. Oh, gosh, see. The Sun is supportive of Jonson, not surprising, on this story, because apparently the deputy editor was one of the parties and has been issued with a fine. That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me at all. Doesn't surprise me. Like I say, we're probably going to find out there were a lot of other, shall we say, non-number 10 people invited to these parties, and it's like, why have you been allowed in? We thought it was only work only. So again, we'll probably have to wait for the Sue Gray report on that, but we'll see. We'll see.
He's getting the big decisions right as a global leader at the moment.
I'm very happy about Brexit. I'm very, very proud of what Britain is doing when it comes to Ukraine. I think we are leading the world on that.
No, we're not.
However,
you give him 2 out of 3. I know you disagree.
I do.
I wouldn't even. I wouldn't even give him 2 out of 3. I'd give him a 1 out of 3, and a very, very dubious 1 out of 3 when you said that, oh, he's leading the world's response in this. Absolutely not. Not in any way, shape, or form. I mean, did you see Jonson at the NATO conference? Billy No Mates being treated exactly like Trump was treated at some of these conferences. Everyone just stayed away from him. No one was interested. And the most embarrassing thing of all, you saw when Biden was coming through, and literally it was like Biden was going through, shaking hands, talking with people, and literally Jonson was literally he'd stand there. Jonson would move, like Biden would move to him, move past him, not shake his hand or talk to him. So then Jonson would literally do a complete 360 circle to get back in front of him for Biden to walk past him again. And then he's like standing there like Billy No Mates. So, yeah. Yeah. It puts you in a really strange place. It was like last week when we were covering, George Galloway, and we had Andre Walker, who we were going to cover today, but don't worry, this obviously cropped up, who was like, why am I agreeing with everything Andre Walker's saying about Ukraine? What's going on here? Why are we agreeing on this? And of course, he had to go and ruin it by saying that the EU was, creating war in Ireland. But of course, you can't have everything perfect. He really got 2 out of 3 stars for that. But you can't say that about Jonson here.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm not coming from the perspective. I mean, look, Keir Starmer and Nicola Sturgeon will call for Boris Johnson to resign on a daily basis. It's Wednesday, let's call for him to resign. He's unfit for office. I don't start from that perspective in terms of what he's actually achieved. And indeed, I would fear that actually any other leader, we might still be in lockdown right now and would have been in lockdown all the way through last summer and indeed last winter as well. So, credit where credit's due. So I'm not coming from a stance of like, oh, he has to go just because he's Boris Johnson. But we do have...
And those calls turned out to be incredibly bad. Incredibly bad. Like I say, COVID is not over. My local hospital at the moment, literally up the road, doesn't have... Well, is not accepting normal visitors. if you end up in Barnsley Hospital for any reason whatsoever at the moment, you can't have visitors. Why? Because they're having a massive COVID outbreak at the moment up there and up here. And it's not the only hospital reporting that. You know, COVID is still a thing. It's still out there and it's still causing a whole lot of trouble. And the worst thing of all is there's no lockdown measures. There's no testing measures. You don't have to isolate. You know, no mandatory masks. I worry. I really, really do worry about what's going to happen potentially in the next few months over COVID over here. Because I worry we could end up, if there's a mutation, we could end up back at square one. And I'm talking March of 2020, square one. That's how much I'm worried about it. Let's just back 5 seconds.
Chance of like, oh, he has to go just because he's Boris Johnson. But we do have standards, or I thought we had standards in this country that particularly...
Hang on. So will it really take multiple MPs from the party to resign and, of course, the 1922 committee to rein in the PM as a way to save the party? Yes. It really will. It's going to take the MPs right into the 1922 committee. That is the only way you can have a vote of no confidence. But of course, the arithmetic many of these Tories are doing at the moment is if we send our letters to the 1922 committee, can we then win the vote of no confidence? Is there going to be enough of us to vote him out? Because it's a secret ballot, so you don't know who's voted which way. You'll get the numbers, but it's not like so-and-so voted to keep him and so-and-so didn't. And if that happens, he's then safe for a year from another no confidence vote. But multiple MPs resigning, yes, but no MP really wants to resign at the moment, especially in the Tory party. None of the Tory party MPs are going to resign at the moment.
Related to prime ministers having to be honest, at least to Parliament, if not to journalists, if not to voters. At least they had to be honest with Parliament. And when the prime minister was first asked about these various different parties, and we now know that 12 were being investigated by Sue Gray, 8 being investigated by the police, 6 of which we understand the prime minister himself attended. This is just possibly the first of 6 different fines, given that this birthday party was seen to be actually probably the least of the offences that had been committed. When he was first asked about this, he'd said, yeah, look, I did this. These were all the occasions. I'm really sorry. I was completely wrong. Maybe people would forgive him. But he first of all denied any knowledge of any parties. He said he was as horrified as everyone else was by the idea there had been parties. Then he said that he didn't think there'd been parties. These were gatherings, they were work meetings. Then he said he wasn't at any. And then he said he was at them, but he didn't think there were parties. And now he's saying he wasn't aware that he was breaking the rules. He's changed his story about 5 times.
Yep. That sums it up. That really sums it up, just how much Jonson has changed his story over these allegations. Well, not allegations, but all the PartyGate scandal. And it's shocking that he's still here. Remember, back in January, we were on Boris watch. And we know now we came close. We were 2 letters off the mark. Are we going to end up with more letters? It's possible. It's entirely possible. But I'll tell you now, if the Prime Minister starts to get more fines, it's entirely possible. And Glasgow Kiss is in. Good evening. But yeah, you are right. He's not going to get pushed till at least May the 6th. And of course, local elections are coming up. We've had, of course, as I mentioned earlier before, the Guildford local elections. Again, meant to be a Tory safe seat. The Lib Dems took all the Tory seats. A sign of things to come? I definitely think so. So anyway, let's continue.
And each one of those has been a lie.
Well, let's first of all consider what you were saying at the beginning of that paragraph, which is that you would rather have a worse leader of this country because of something that happened 2 years ago. Now, is that really in the national interest? Are you really saying to me that you would like a leader who would have kept us in lockdown longer, who might not have got the vaccine, who would be most unlikely to be a leader on the world stage because somebody came into the Prime Minister's office and wished him happy birthday?
That's not what happened.
Is that really,
That's not what happened.
Yep. Again, trying to spin the narrative there, Jacob. Definitely trying to spin the narrative there. Oh, 2 years ago, Boris did nothing wrong. Honestly, if Boris somehow survives, to the next general election, it is going to be an absolute open season, because all the questions all those Conservative MPs standing for re-election are going to get asked are all going to be about Partygate. How can we trust you? Etc., etc., etc. They're going to get absolutely crucified completely. And as Parsi Paul says, the Wakefield by-election, again, town next over, very close to Barnsley. That is a big one. Labour already 7 points ahead in the local polls. It does look like Labour are going to retake Wakefield. They've already been out there campaigning for quite some time. You know, I've been out there and joined them as well. Well, when I can. But like I say, I want to get over there in Wakefield and get over there supporting as well, because I want Labour to win there. You have a very, very good chance of winning, because they're the last Labour MP. Name escapes me. She was very well thought of, very highly regarded, and yet they replaced him with this guy. And of course, now it's by-election time. So this could very well be the first red seat that goes back to Labour. I think that very, very much likely. And that, again, will certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons, especially against all those red wall Tories who are hoping not to be a one-term MP. Mary Craig, thank you very much, party. So, yeah, things could get very, very interesting if that Wakefield seat goes towards Labour. And I don't think they've announced a date yet. As far as I'm aware, I don't think they've announced a date for the by-election yet. But we'll keep you posted. We'll keep you posted on what happens there. Don't worry.
30 people, including his wife and their interior decorator, got a cake and arrived for a party in the cabinet room.
The Prime Minister was working throughout the day. He had 8 meetings in the day. He had been to visit.
Oh, isn't what do you always hear about Boris Johnson recently? Oh, Boris, he's working so hard. He's working so hard. Now even the Tory MPs are desperately trying to pull that card. Desperately trying to, well, hope that somehow makes this go away. Trust me, it ain't going to go away. Public anger was already boiling at this. It is now overflowing. It is now overflowing at this.
to school, he was with all the same people he was working with throughout the day.
So was I, but I wasn't allowed to have parties with them.
And that, I think, is the key to your
Jacob, this is what I find absurd. And this is an argument given by lots of cabinet ministers and lots of Tory MPs. This argument that, but he was with the same people he was with all day. Yes, and so were millions of other people who were also working through that. But they were not allowed to have any gatherings. The law was very specific. It quite specifically stated you were allowed to have no gatherings at all, even a work meeting, unless it was specifically necessary for work. Meeting to have a cake and wish someone happy birthday was not necessary for work.
They were.
No notes. No notes, absolutely there. And like I say, this is the point where you need to get the mental floss out and just go, why am I agreeing so much with Julia Hartley-Brewer? What's going on here? Oh yeah, by the way, Gads, they actually have tried to release today the idea that was it now the replacement, the community fund that they've released is that to replace the EU development funds. Again, the money comes nowhere near to what is actually required, and it's not just given to the towns that need it most. The councils have to apply for it. So even if you are desperately needing that development money, you could put in an application and the government could just go, no, I don't think so. What a replacement to the EU development funds. And they've already been skewered on some of that stuff today as well. But they put it out there in an attempt to try and probably sneak away some bad news so that people wouldn't notice it, or at least try and change tact of the conversation to something else. But needless to say, it ain't worked. It certainly hasn't worked.
Weren't necessarily there for work, and at work wished him happy birthday. I think
they gathered to wish him happy birthday, not for a meeting.
I think we're into angels on a pinhead.
No, I don't think we are. I don't think we are.
No, I know you don't. That point's quite clear. But I think we are, because those people were all there. They were in the cabinet room. The Prime Minister uses the cabinet room as part of his office. It's right next door.
Was his interior decorator making decisions about policy at the time as well? Why was she there? Why was his wife there?
People who were working in...
Again, you just can't defend this. You really just can't defend this. And bear in mind, this is going to stick around. This ain't going nowhere. This anger is going to stick around. And if they are foolish enough to keep Jonson until the next general election, they are kidding themselves that Jonson is going to win, or at least be good for them like he was in 2019. They are kidding themselves. I literally think that if Boris does somehow survive this, and he makes it, or it's at least coming up, shall we say, to that next general election, I think he'll be taken in a room by some very senior Tories and said, look, you cannot stay. You cannot continue. You must go. And I think that will be the play. And then Boris can come out and say, is sort of allowed to say, face it, say, and come out and say, well, I've done my job. I've got Brexit done. I've, led Britain through the pandemic. I've led Britain through the war in Ukraine. And then he can be allowed to go off and at least save some face. I think that's generally what I think the Tories are going to do. But even then, as I've said before, once Boris goes, it's civil war time. It is serious civil war time. The factionalism and the different ideologies at play in the Tory party are so opposite ends of each other that it is inevitable for them to clash. And we are going to see some serious blue-on-blue action. And that is one of the reasons why a lot of them do want to keep Boris in post, because they know he's the only one holding a lot of these disparate groups together. There's no one else in the party that can bring these different groups together.
In your house were entitled to come to your house. You could have somebody come and mend
Was she
your boiler.
decorating the cabinet room, was she?
If you have somebody coming to talk to you about decorating the property which is physically within the location that you are in, you don't. If somebody was mending your bathroom, you didn't have to speak to them only in the bathroom. That must logically
I thought the Prime Minister was really busy during his working day, and yet for some reason had a work meeting with his interior decorator in the middle of the working day, in the middle of a pandemic. Really?
Even very busy.
This is, I keep on saying this is so indefensible. Even when you have Julia Hart-Brewer, who is like really pro-conservative and will normally defend the Conservatives on some really, nasty stuff, even she's like, yeah, no, I can't take you seriously, Jacob. This is indefensible. I can't believe you're doing this to me type area.
The people have to take care of their arrangements as well. Even someone as grand as you must have occasionally to consider.
I don't think I've ever had an interior designer
in your home environment.
Yeah. Well, let's look. You said, look, do we want to have a worse leader because of a decision that was made 2 years ago? The reality is, for a lot of people, it doesn't feel like it was 2 years ago. People remember like it was yesterday that they couldn't visit a loved one in hospital. They didn't get to say goodbye to someone who died, whether they died of COVID or not. By the way, those aren't the only people who died during that period. They had to cancel weddings. Their children didn't get birthday parties. They didn't meet their grandparents. They had their businesses closed. They missed out on the things that make life worthwhile. And yet, meanwhile, everyone in number 10 was going to a party every Friday night.
I think this idea that was constant party in number 10 is simply false.
There was.
Again, how do you defend against this? Seriously. If you're Jacob Rees-Mogg, what's your comeback to this? There is no defending this. There is absolutely no defending this in any way, shape, or form. And I'm going to be aghast to see how Boris gets out of this one, dear readers, because I don't see a way out for him for this. He's going to get multiple fines. He's going to get multiple fines. He's going to get absolutely crucified in the upcoming May local elections. And I certainly don't see how he survives after that utter catastrophe or potential wipeout. Because if you think those Tory councillors are going to sit quiet and they're already saying we will not be sacrificed for Boris, they are going to be up in arms. Absolutely. And who knows what that could lead to.
The Prime Minister was at a few events which have been highlighted. He was not at boozy events.
Yes, he was.
He was not at boozy events when we know full well they were sneaking booze in rolling briefcases into number 10. We had a party that was specifically said, bring your own booze. We know from testimonials of people who were there that there were people getting absolutely ratted. So how on earth can they do that? Oh yeah, Ben, yeah. They were all on the Schlur. It was all the Schlur they were drinking. They've grown up soft drink. Yeah, garden party is wine in that photo too. Yeah. Yeah. Bring your own booze and coke. Oh, that's the thing though. Oh my word. If it gets seen that there were drugs in number 10, that is going to cause a huge furore. That is going to be an absolute huge furore, especially with how, again, tough the Conservatives like to be on drugs. But if Boris found to get used in, or if drugs get found to have been used in the Prime Minister's flat, doesn't matter if Boris is found to have used them or not, just the very thing that Boris has used drugs in the, or there have been drugs found in the number 10 flat, Boris must have done it. That is such an easy win for all, and I mean all the opposition parties, going from now until the next general election. Like, yeah, you are right, Ben. Things could get really spicy then if that happens. Really spicy.
No, he wasn't. Those events did not involve the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was not in the building for those.
He attended the Bring a Bottle of Booze party in number 10 Downing
He was
Street Garden.
in his own garden. He wasn't at boozy party.
Oh, so would it have been okay if I'd had a Bring a Booze party at that time in my garden? No, of course not.
This is not what the Prime Minister's had a ticket for, so this isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about an event in the Cabinet Office. No one is trying to defend the event that took place on the eve of the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral, when people had drink at a farewell party, and the Prime Minister was not involved. He was, as I understand it, Chequers at the time. So I think one's got to be clear about
he was at 6 different events,
and that Downing Street is a large building where lots of people work. It is not, as I think some people think, the Prime Minister's private residence where people are constantly in his kitchen. It's not like that. It is an office building. But Julia, can I come on, because I think there is an area of agreement between.
There is no area of agreement that we know all this happened. We've got all the testimony. We've got countless photos. At the beginning of this, the Met have still a mountain of evidence they are sifting through over these PartyGate allegations. We will have to see what happens, but it's going to be an interesting week. It's really, really going to be an interesting week to see what happens here. I can't tell you how this is going to turn out, whether this is finally the thing that brings down Boris Johnson. I really can't tell you. We're just have to wait and see what happens. Because we've been here before. We have been here exactly before. We've had all the evidence. We've had all the stuff to come out, but Boris has done wrong. He's been fine. So while I am quietly confident this might be the thing that finishes him off, at the same time, I'm also very much like, well, we've been here before.
Between us on this, and I've said a couple of times publicly that I think it's really, really important that the inquiry looks into the balance of the rules, because I don't think it was right that people could not go and say farewell to a member of their family.
Did you say that at the time?
Who was dying. Well,
no, you didn't.
I didn't say it at the time. I didn't say it publicly, but I am bound by collective responsibility. And
did you say it at Cabinet?
I made my views clear. I don't think anyone was in any doubt of my views privately on the extent of lockdown.
This is the trouble, is that a lot of people now are going to say they were opposed to a lot of these rules, but they were happily, announcing these rules and enforcing these rules and cheering on when people got fines for these rules.
Yeah, but I never did any of that. I mean, you will remember the occasion where.
Oh my God! What are your bets now? Seriously, what are your bets now that it comes out that Jacob Rees-Mogg was cheering on one of these people getting fined? Like, what are the odds? What are the odds on this? And of course, it's even more shocking because I've said this before. What if we did actually have? What if Mogg got in like 2019? What do you think Mogg's response to the pandemic would have been? We wouldn't have had any lockdown laws, any whatsoever. And that is terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying that they would have just said, this is no more deadly than the flu. Carry on. Worst death rate. We are the worst death rate in all of Europe. I think we are I think we're still the 4th highest death rate. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I still think we are the 4th highest death rate over this.
A couple of people out walking, had a cup of coffee, and were fined. It never seemed to me sensible to take that approach.
And yet you were part of a government that made that the law.
Oh, well, actually, that fine was remitted because that was deemed to be a mistake. So, with all rules, there is a judgment as to what is the right level.
People were fined for sitting on park benches, for goodness sake. It was an insane time. And a lot of that insanity was perpetuated by people who claim now, to yourself, the fact that, oh no, I never agreed with that. Let me come to the issue a lot of people are saying about well, look.
That is actually a fair point she's bringing up. A lot of the Tories who are, again, trying to desperately support Boris, like Mogg is now, are trying to say that, all those things in during lockdown, all those people who got fines, I was dead against that. You didn't really say that at the time, because I think they knew that if they did, they'd get absolutely pilloried for it in Parliament and in the press.
Prime Minister delivered Brexit. That's what he was elected to do in 2019, and we know that. He's also led the way on Ukraine, and as I say, very proud of what he's been doing there. And I wish other leaders had taken a leaf out of his book. The argument being, I mean, front page of the Mail makes this point: don't they know there's a war on? A lot of Tory MPs, a lot of cabinet ministers saying, "Look, we've got important jobs to do." Was it unwise for the French to have the first round of their presidential election, indeed their second round coming up in a week and a half's time, given that
True. The French, I had completely forgotten about that. First round of the French presidential election. Again, this is just so indefensible. And of course you can change your prime minister during a war. The French are doing it right now. Second rounds in 2 weeks' time. Yeah, the more and more you hear like the defense from like Mogg and other Conservative MPs who are desperately trying to, like, I don't know, stand up for Boris for God knows what reason. They just get ripped to shreds like this. And remember, this is a journalist who is normally very highly favorable to the Conservatives, giving them like softball interviews.
There is a war on in Europe. Was it unwise for the Americans to have their presidential election during COVID? Should we just suspend our standards because there's a war on?
I think we go back to your fundamental point, which is you want a worse leader of this country because you're cross and because the Prime Minister didn't follow your policy on COVID. That's what it boils down to.
That's the fun point. You want a worse leader? What do you mean by that, Mog? Because any person, if you get rid of Jonson now, let's say Jonson goes tomorrow, it is a Conservative leadership election. They will be elected leader of the Conservative Party and pretty much by default get to be Prime Minister. And according to Mog, all the candidates are worse than Jonson. And Paz News has beat me to it. If he's saying that Jonson is the best that they've got, if Jonson, if Mog is generally saying that that's the best the Conservative Party has to offer, well, the Conservative Party is in a lot more deeper trouble than I think they're probably willing to admit. Oh dear.
It's quite clearly. Really, your anger, your ire is directed at the Prime Minister because of lockdown in principle, which you opposed on your radio show throughout the period. You always thought it was wrong. And because now there's something that's come out that says that he made a mistake, you're saying, well, that's
he didn't make a mistake. He deliberately flouted laws that he had brought in for everyone else. That's not a mistake.
That is extraordinary overstatement. You are simply exaggerating the situation. A mistake was made.
A mistake. Did he accidentally stumble into a party? Did he stumble into 6 different parties?
He didn't take your advice. And you are now saying you want a worse leader of this country.
A worse leader. He says it again. What do you mean by that, Jacob? Any next leader is going to be a Conservative Prime Minister. What do you mean? What do you mean? The defense he's offering is insane, and he's just completely indefensible. I don't understand how you can do this, but my word, this is like this interview starts off bad and it just gets worse, and we haven't even finished it yet. We're only like 15 minutes in of a 23-minute interview. We've still got some time to go yet.
You're saying a worse leader, Jacob Rees-Mogg. You're saying if we don't have someone,
you're saying you want somebody who would be less good at dealing with the Western world in leading it in relation to Ukraine, somebody who has a proved track record of getting the big decisions right, and you, because you're cross, want somebody worse.
Oh, I'm way beyond cross, Jacob.
Your listeners, it would be bad for the country, and would be bad for the world, actually, because we would then not.
But they're going to be a Conservative. They're going to be a Conservative because that's how this works. If Jonson goes, there is a Conservative Party leadership election. And the next Prime Minister, because there ain't going to be a general election, they automatically become Prime Minister. And Mog is saying that any of those potential candidates who are going to stand up and campaign are going to be worse than Jonson. And as we just said earlier, if Jonson is serious, if Mog is seriously saying that Jonson is the best the Conservatives have, and he's saying, oh, Jonson got all the big questions right. No, he didn't. He got so many stuff wrong, especially during COVID. All of Brexit. Brexit is not over. It is not done. It is not finished. We still have to deal with it. We are still dealing with the consequences. We still have to deal with the fact that the Brexit fallout is going to be twice as bad as COVID. You know, we've got a case where EU exporters are basically just saying it's no longer worth exporting to the EU because of all this red tape. There's so much stuff Jonson has got wrong. And yet, according to him, oh, it's all right. He got all the big questions right. No, he did not. No, he did not. Happy crew. Next time, do as I say. Get the cabinet from IKEA. That's right. Flat pack cabinet. That's what the next leader needs to bring in with him.
Of the global leadership that we need.
Jacob, I think it's an extraordinary lack of faith you're showing in your fellow cabinet and your fellow Tory MPs that you think there is nobody in your entire selection of MPs who could be up for the Tory leadership and be Prime Minister of this country right now, who isn't a proven liar and hypocrite. You're saying that if we don't have Boris Johnson, there's not a single person in the cabinet who would lead on Ukraine.
Absolutely right. That is literally what Jacob is saying. It is literally that's literally what he is saying. And she knows it. She knows she's got him by the hook now. And bear in mind, if there is a future Conservative leadership election and Jacob Rees-Mogg goes on the radio, this will get brought up saying, oh, why are you supporting this particular candidate? I thought you said none of them were as good as Boris Johnson. Why are you supporting him? Oh. You know, sometimes words just fail you. Words just fail you sometimes where you see some of this stuff. Oh. I can't even laugh because it says so much stuff about the Conservative Party, and they are the ruling party, which is really, really worrying. And you're like, what? What on earth is he doing? This is an absolute car crash of an interview. It's not even finished yet.
Language is simply getting out of control.
Which bit was untrue?
Proven liar and hypocrite is simply wrong.
Isn't it?
Liar is a very
He said there weren't any parties, and he was at them.
A very strong word. A difference of opinion is not a lie.
He said there weren't any parties. He didn't know of any parties.
A difference of opinion, it's not a lie. It's just a difference of opinion. So remember, next time you get caught lying, just remember those fateful words. It's just a difference of opinion. Yeah, see how quickly you can get see how quickly you can get away with that next time you tell a lie. Oh. Yeah. This is not cocaine. This is chemicals. Oh. Yeah. Humor at its best. Yeah. This is our ruling party. And if there's anyone in America, I know you've got some crazy Republicans over there. But you know, spare a thought sometime and think you might have some crazy guys in your Senate or in your Republican Party, but hey, could be worse. You could have Jacob Rees-Mogg, you know, a Victorian LARPer in your Conservative Party.
Oh.
He didn't attend any parties. That's not true.
He perfectly reasonably thought that the events on his birthday were not a party, that he was there with all the same people he was with all day. Now, you and I disagree on this. You and I may differ in our interpretation, but lies...
What? how can you disagree with the established facts and just say it's just a difference of opinion? It's not a lie. It's just a difference of opinion. Yeah, I wish I had something stronger, to be honest.
These are very strong words. Why it's not allowable in the House of Commons. Likewise, hypocrite is a very strong word. And I think you owe it to your listeners to use language moderately rather than these...
I owe it to my listeners to always tell them what I really think.
Terms.
You genuinely believe that he did not lie when he said he was not at any parties, he knew of no parties, and there were no parties.
He evidently did not lie.
I just don't think this is going to wash. Here's the thing: when we get to, I think Prime Minister will survive right now. I think a lot of MPs are just waiting to see what the public think, and people will be in different views on this. Fundamentally, though, if we do get
the public anger on this was already at boiling point. The public anger is only going to get worse. We have seen the numbers whenever they've been done. It's over like close to. It's over like 65, sometimes close to 70% of whenever you see these polls done. I think Boris Johnson should resign. You can probably find a poll very easily quite now where the overwhelming majority think they should resign.
To the May local elections on the 5th of May, and if a lot of Tory voters maybe don't vote Labour, maybe they will in the red wall seats, but they sit on their hands and show their disgust that way. They may not. You may be right. I may be in the minority on this, but that's not what the polls suggest I am. But what happens then? Do the Tories suddenly discover their moral backbone?
The Tories maintain their moral backbone at all times. I consistently...
The Tories maintain their moral backbone at all times. Then how do you explain electing a guy like Boris Johnson? Explain to me that one. Explain to me that one, Jacob. Explain that one.
They thought that the Prime Minister is the right person to lead this country. I backed him for a long time. His decision-making capabilities show that he is the right leader for this country, and he will be judged by his successes. The current issue he has to tackle is the cost of living crisis. That will be the big test for a general election when it eventually comes.
And what's he done? What has Jonson actually done about cost of living crisis? He's done nothing. He's done nothing. And still does nothing. But there you go. Judge the Prime Minister on his results. A guy who has bumbled and fumbled his way through and easily had one of the worst responses of any developed country to the pandemic, and has bumbled the country into a recession because of that. We are having the slowest growth out of all of the G7 countries. The growth this month was at 0.1% when it was predicted to be 0.3%. We are seeing all the countries around the world having massive export booms as supply lines get back to normal. Guess what? We aren't, because of Brexit. So much stuff for the next general election. Boris and co and the rest of the Conservatives are going to say, oh, look how fantastic we did. It is so easy just to say, you did nothing. You failed. You haven't delivered on any of your promises. Brexit is an absolute mess. You didn't deliver on the cost of living crisis. Just so much stuff. So much stuff that they will be able to just hammer at them for. at the next general election.
That's the issue of today.
Okay, and just finally, he's being investigated over 6 of the 8 parties being investigated by the police. If he has to pay a fine for any more of those parties, perhaps even all 6, will you still be saying the same thing?
The Prime Minister is an exceptional leader. It is rare in the history of this country that we have a truly exceptional Prime Minister, and we have got one, and he is worth supporting, and he continues to be worth supporting. That is in the interest of the nation, as you even agreed.
He is not a truly exceptional Prime Minister. He will go down in history as one of the worst Prime Ministers of all time. History will not remember Jonson very favourably at all.
Earlier in this interview, and I think therefore one has to get a sense of proportion. What is in the national interest? Boris Johnson is in the national interest.
It's an interesting day to be on air. It really is. We've got calls for the Prime Minister and the Chancellor to resign. We've got demands for Parliament to be recalled.
So, yeah. That's that. That was a car crash interview. That was an absolute car crash of an interview. But whenever the Prime Minister needs defending against the indefensible, roll out Rees-Mogg. You know, he'll defend Boris. Yeah. Wow. What an interview. What an interview. And I can't tell you what's going to happen between now and next weekend. I really can't tell you what's going to happen between now and next weekend. And especially, I think next Monday, is when Parliament gets back. Oh, no, not next Monday. It'll be another week before it gets back. Yeah, because it's bank holiday weekend this week. Trying to remember my days. This is, I generally can't tell you what's going to happen. I generally can't. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they'll, grow his spine and send in those letters. If the vote of no confidence happens, I can't even guarantee that Boris would lose. And of course, if he wins, then he's safe from another no confidence vote for over a year. If he does lose, it goes to a leadership election. And I at one time I used to be able to tell you with certainty that it would be Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. Can't even tell you that with confidence now. And when that happens, it will be full-blown civil war, because the only thing that is keeping all these different factions together is Boris Johnson. He's somehow managing to use his Jonson electoral magic to keep them all together. But once he's gone, during that leadership election, it's factional infighting. They will all want their own candidate in. They'll all want to set their own agendas. What an interview that was. But anyway, yeah. Jonson, absolutely going to get more fines. Absolutely. And public anger is only going to increase. Only going to increase. And I wouldn't be surprised now if lots of MPs are finding that they are getting letters. Like I say, if you are in the UK and you have a Conservative MP, write to them. Tell them, get rid of Jonson. Organise your friends, all your friends that live in that area. Tell them to send it. If you know anyone else who lives in like a Conservative area, get them to send a letter as well. That's what we need to be organising now. But there's no one organising it. And like I say, I don't have a big enough platform to be able to organise this type of stuff. But maybe one day, who knows? But yeah. Interesting times. interesting times, as always, for British politics. But as always, thank you very much for you all joining in today. Like I say, we'll see you next Saturday for the Good Morning Walk. As always, out in the fresh air, out among the animals, more specifically the ponies. And of course, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new on the way out. Need a Scotch. Thank you very much, Cathal OG. Thank you very much for your support as always. Like saying, if you would like to support the channel, there are again links down below to my Patreon page and my one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, thank you very much to everyone again who does support that channel, even if you do hit the like and share button. Like I say, good night, everyone. Have a fantastic night, and who knows what could happen by tomorrow morning. Maybe we'll wake up and Boris will be gone. It'd be a nice dream if it would happen, but who knows? So as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.